Hi, Peter Boyles again. Welcome to the shoot here right down the hall from the radio station 710 KNUS. We have done many of these shoots thanks to Mark Crowley and Brian Taylor and, of course, Kelly Michaels. This one for me is extremely special. We go back after his career in sports was over, but he's coming into broadcasting at that time. He's working at KOA Radio. I'm doing a morning show on KHOW, and we met in a news tank. We met in the news tank, and it was kind of divided up. Sports was over here, and news was over here, and stuff was all in the middle. And you walked out of the where the guys would do the scores. I said, reading the scores. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only 1990 Colorado Buffaloes champions. This guy is the man. Charles Johnson, CJ, is with us, and it just doesn't come any better. We haven't laid eyes on one another in
too long.
Too long. That's a great way to say it. Welcome, man. I called everybody and told them you're going to be here. So
wow, that's and it made my day. The invitation, first of all, I really appreciate it. Uncle Pete, right? We have to call it like it is and always was. It's a pleasure being here. When I finally laid eyes on you, when I walked into this building in this palatial studio, boy, you sure did well for yourself, young man. But you look great.
That's kind.
Like I said, it's been.
I know the last time I saw you. The last time I saw you at a dinner. I mean, you were out with your family having dinner at, I'm going to say Elway's, but I'm not. And I said, "That's Charles." And went over, and I'm sure I interrupted everybody's dinner, but hi, how are you? And at that time, you had gone back to CU.
Right. So we're talking almost 15, 20 years ago.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Let's start again. Detroit.
Yes.
Talk about growing up. Because I have this theory that we were bouncing off each other. The prophet in his own land. Do you think that this Charles Johnson could be that Charles Johnson if you'd have stayed in Detroit?
No, I don't. And Pete, there's so many reasons why I say that. I look back over the arc of my life and the trajectory of my life, and I'm always mindful of my best friend growing up, a guy named Terrence Timmons. Tug was his name. And when I say best friends, we were like brothers, sure. Same age. Really from cradle to today, or to the last day he walked on this earth. And here's the difference. His dad died when he was a child in the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. His mom became a drug addict. Mm-hmm. We were neighbors, so my family took him in. Sure. And my mom gave him all the love that she gave myself and my 6 siblings. He was my brother. Pete, we both took a test in our 8th grade years. We were high academic kids, in our neighborhood. We competed with and against each other for everything, as kids do. Mm-hmm. And very bright guy, good athlete, great student. We took a test to go to Detroit Country Day, which would take us out of our inner city neighborhood, Cooley High School.
You went to Cooley High. Well, I've forgotten that.
Well, I went to Country Day.
I know, but
my siblings went to Cooley High.
I forget. We talked about that.
That's exactly right. And
the real Cooley High.
That's right. And my brother Tug did not pass the entrance exam to go to Country Day. I did, so they say, because I thought I did terrible on it as an 8th grader. I think they may have thought I was a slightly better football player.
There you go.
I get in, he doesn't. My life trajectory goes off the charts in one direction, his in the other direction. So you ask the question, what would life have been had I stayed in Detroit? And as you know, growing up in the inner city in Pittsburgh, it doesn't take much. But by God's grace, it really doesn't take much for the narrative to be completely different. That was beyond my control. I wasn't a kid who studied for a test to get in, and probably didn't do well on it. Just a slightly better football player, so they thought, than Tug. Long story short, he goes off. I come to Colorado on a football scholarship ultimately. Tug goes to prison. Never saw a day in the 90s not incarcerated. Myself, my story is my story. And Tug ultimately ends up getting killed in the neighborhood we grew up in 2011. And I often ask myself, there are these sort of touch points over the course of your life where you say, what if this would have been slightly different? Or what if that would have been slightly different? And you realize that so much of this is beyond your control. And you just wonder, like, what if?
Oh, I think about it all the time.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, there's like multiple me's.
That's right. By the way, now listen, two broad. Now you're the legend broadcaster, and I kind of dabbled in it. I might want to ask you a question, by the way, or two, Pete. So I'm gonna flip the tables on you because your life story is as, if not more, compelling than mine. I remember the conversations we used to have about you growing up right off the Allegheny, if I'm not mistaken, right on the Allegheny in Pittsburgh, and I've always marveled at your ability to do this broadcasting work in such a unique way.
See, I think this is what I love about this show, and because none of this was planned. I believe that you're given a gift, and I believe that. I mean, I didn't know any of this. I mean, I'm like you're talking about, and I barely got out of high school. I mean, like this, but I could read and I could remember and those kinds of things, but I didn't know that any of this was even out there available. And I have a dear friend. We grew up together, and he's dying, and we talk, and I said, what did we want? And like this is like now 1962, 63. I said, what did we want? We came out. I wrote a column about it. We wanted a nice car, not a new car, but a nice car, a steady girlfriend, and money in your pocket.
Right.
You didn't want 10 grand in the bank. That was, forget it. You didn't have 5 grand.
You want to be able to get a burger.
$50.
Take your steady girlfriend out on a date every night.
And a nice car. Not when you say like, and I said that's as far as we could see. And I said, who did we look up to? And we looked up to the guy that had the older than us had the way cool car, and had the really, when I say she was hot, she sizzled, and and made good dough.
Yeah.
What was good dough? I don't know. That's as far as we could see.
Yeah.
I couldn't see any of this.
That's right. That's
right. I also believe, and I think it speaks to both of us, it speaks to many people we know. You're given this, but you're not allowed to have that.
Right. That's right. And I think, Pete, that this is, and I know there's a lot that we'll talk about over the course of our time together today, but I think this is where, I believe we all are given gifts, but I think the greatest gift we are given is the audacity to dream beyond our current circumstance, right? Or when confronted with opportunities that we're completely unfamiliar with, the audacity to believe that, you know what, I could do that, right? And not fear failure, and not take a setback as failure.
What are they going to say to you?
That's right. That's right. That's exactly. They didn't expect me to be there anyway, right? They didn't expect Uncle Pete to be there anyway.
No.
So I think, as I look over the course of my life, every sort of turning point moment was, was just a willingness to say.
Were you always willing to push all the chips in?
Yes, and do so in many cases, not even realizing that's exactly what I was doing. Right? When I came to Colorado, I pushed the chips in, never having been west of Chicago. Never been west of Chicago. I got to Boulder from Detroit and thought to myself, am I still in America? Is this this still America? Yeah. I came to Colorado. Not many people know this.
When year did you come here?
1987.
All right.
Not many people know this. I was a very late recruit to CU. Therefore, Coach McCartney didn't have any scholarships. I walked on.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Uncle Pete, I was a walk-on my first semester. So I wasn't on scholarship until the second semester of my freshman year. Now you fast forward the story to, so that's pushing the chips in. I turned down scholarships back near home, Eastern Michigan, a few of the MAC conference schools, Michigan State, who offered me, but they didn't offer me to play quarterback. They wanted me to change positions. And so I took a leap of faith, come to Colorado. Coach Mack recruited me to be a quarterback, but I didn't have a scholarship. My sophomore year, first semester, we're getting ready to play Oklahoma. So we're stretching the night before the game. I'll never forget this. This is one of those turning point moments in life. The first one was deciding to come out to an unfamiliar land, knowing no one.
I would say that the stranger in the strange land.
That's exactly who I was, right?
That's
in 1987. Fast forward to the fall of 1988, my sophomore year. The night before we were to play Oklahoma, nationally televised game, I get a visit as we're stretching on the field from Coach Mack and two gentlemen in suits. I had no idea who they were. They stopped at my feet as I was sitting on my butt stretching and said, "CJ, we need to talk to you." I'm 19 years old, wondering what. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. First thing came out of my mouth, right? And so they say, you may not be aware, but you have been financially disenrolled from school. So not only can you not participate in football anymore, but you're not a student on campus anymore. And until you get this $6,338 debt paid.
I still remember.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Until you do that, you cannot participate. In fact, you have to go clear your locker out because by NCAA rules, you can't be on this field. And so for the next, from October of '88 through March of '89, guess what I did, Uncle Pete? As a good Detroiter kid, grew up in a union family would do. I went and got a job making roller skate wheels at a manufacturing plant in Boulder for 6 months. And that's how I paid that $6,338 bill. I was re-enrolled that following March, and then the rest is history. People remember the Orange Bowl and all that stuff. That was one of those push the chips in moments.
If you grow up a certain way, and there's a great line that said, "You'll be surprised what you'll eat when you're hungry."
Oh, love it.
And so, I say it all the time. I didn't know who to turn to for money. I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know anything.
That's right.
I didn't know how to do a checkbook.
That's right.
I mean, all that kind of stuff that we didn't. I'm not playing the violin and feeling sorry for myself.
No.
We just didn't know.
We didn't know, and the reason I didn't. My parents didn't know until at least 25 years later. They never knew that was the case. Because to your point, like I can't call Mama and ask her for $6,000.
And if you did, and they didn't, now they'd feel bad if they didn't have it.
That's right. And she would try to turn heaven and earth over to help me. Oh, yeah. But that would be unfair to my other siblings and to her, quite frankly. And so I had to figure it out. And so, I mean, you're absolutely right. And pushing the chips in has just been standard operating procedure for me.
And there's the guy who wrote The Shootist wrote a book called Bless the Beast and the Children about special needs kids, the one-offs, and they're saving this buffalo herd. And but on the other side, he writes The Shootist. So they're in the barn, and what the hell's John Wayne plays him in the movies. J.B. Brooks is the old gunfighter, and he knows he's dying, but he has killed whatever the number is, 22 guys or something. And the Ron Howard character says to the old man, he said, "How were you able to kill all those guys?" And his answer was, "I was willing." So how did you and
that's good.
It was this powerful moment. And I was willing to kill him.
Yeah.
He said they were, and so, you could have went home. You could have done all these different things, but watch this.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And that's the admirable part of so many people's lives.
It's what I admire a lot about you, Pete. Like, I listen closely. And by the way, I love the way you reference, these great quotes. And you one of the best read.
And then my response is, two things. One is they give me free books. No, they do. I get free books. Number two, and I've written about some of this. We were a family growing up, and when summer came, I always love it when I meet guys. I went to space camp, and
right.
They said, "Where did you go on vacation?" Grandma's.
Right.
But
that's exactly right.
Oh, of course. And but we had library cards.
Yeah.
And once every 2 weeks, my mom would take us to the Carnegie Library, because you weren't going to do anything in the summer. I'm in like a 7 and 8, 9, 10. I could get 5 books or 6 books. I'd take them home, and that's what I did. I mean, but that's, and so later in high school, I would take these, they called them AP history classes. I could argue with the teacher. Then it came time to take the test, I wouldn't take it. Or time to do a paper, I wouldn't do that. Because you don't want your friends thinking you're smart.
That's true. That could get you in trouble back in the day.
Oh.
Right? That could get you in trouble. Unless you just pushed all your chips in on being that guy. That could get you in trouble. Because it was hard to be the smartest guy and, one of the guys, too.
Yeah. Oh, you can't. I mean, I again, writing these stories, I read all the beat poets when I'm a kid. And there was a guy named Lawrence Ferlinghetti who wrote a collection of poems called A Coney Island of the Mind, and he owned this legendary bookstore called City Lights in San Francisco, and he had Kerouac, he had Gregory Corso. I'm doing a morning show on KOA, and it turns out he's going to be in town. So I go out of my way to get him, because, CJ, I would have to put his poetry books down my back and my pants, and pull my jacket down over it.
Why?
You can't walk home with a poetry book.
Oh, yeah. You could get some.
There's a word.
Yeah, that gets you in trouble too, Pete.
Oh man! And I remember he came in. And he said, "Why am I here like in this?" And I said, and I just started quoting his poetry to him, and he kind of did the double take.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he sat down, and let us go where the junk man goes. That was one of his great. He sat down. We did like 2 hours together, and I thought, that's a guy.
That's awesome.
That's a guy.
Yeah.
So when it begins. What? By the way, I promised myself I'd ask so many questions. What was Mac like? What was Coach Mac like?
Listen, in a word, awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you can't say Bill McCartney without soliciting, Bill McCartney is the guy who is not just okay with anyone.
Yeah.
People either loved him or just hated him, right? And I was fortunate enough to be in close proximity and have a real relationship with this guy and witness how he advocated for his players in a way that was unapologetic and sometimes even wrong. Yeah. Even wrong in terms of a particular position he may have taken or not. But Mac was uncompromised, Pete. And I tell you now, you may reach over this table and try and choke me when I say this, but you guys have a lot of qualities in common. Listen, this guy was, and I had a chance 3 weeks ago to go visit Coach Mac in his diminished state with dementia that's well publicized. Not sure if he even recognized me or recall, but we spent an hour together watching college football on a Saturday morning about 3 weeks ago. And I hope he heard me or understood when I told him, Coach, I love you. And I thank you for all that you've given me and the way you stood up and fought for me. I'll tell you a story real quick about Coach Mac. We were, it was the summer of '88, I believe. And there was a rule CU had. You could only attend summer school, or your scholarship would only pay for summer school classes if you needed coursework to be eligible for the upcoming season. Mac said, whoever decides to stay in Boulder, we will pay for your summer school courses. I didn't need classes to be eligible, but since I'm in town, I may as well take summer school courses. They wouldn't allow me to sign up. I went to Mac's office. I said, Coach, they won't let me sign up. It was a group of 3 of us. He got up from his desk. We walked across campus to the bursar's office. Mac, in typical Mac fashion, walks in. Of course, everyone's taking note of Bill McCartney walking in. And he asked us, who said no? So we're like,
oh, you bet.
They did over there.
Yeah.
He said, listen, sign these 3 up for summer school classes now, And if you have any issues, and I'll wait till you do it, I'll stay here till you do it. If you have any issues with anyone, tell them to come see me. He turns and walks, leaves us there to sign up, and I'm thinking, but that was Bill McCartney. That was Coach Mack. He didn't have to do it. It was reasonable that was a rule.
Great men and women have much in common. And conversely, on the other end of the stick, they have a lot in common. CU is in this, resurgence, a renaissance. I have a couple of nephews that are like that. They said, one kid lives in Boston. He's brilliant. He said, if you go into a sports paraphernalia store in Boston, you can't find any CU, not because it wasn't there, any merch, because everybody is wearing CU merch.
It's amazing.
This guy's done it.
It's amazing.
What do you think of him?
Love him.
I do too.
Love him.
I've never met him.
Pete, we have to change that now, and I'll tell you, it's funny. It's interesting and insightful that you mentioned. You bring up Coach Prime.
They're the pillars on one
That's
end
right.
and the other end.
And they have so much in common. It's hard to see because of how it's packaged, right?
Yeah.
Bill McCartney was sort of your straight out of central casting sort of head coach.
Very
right?
much so.
Older white male
Yeah.
who had this incredible relationship, had this incredible ability to connect with families, with parents, particularly African American families. He had this incredible ability to do that, just like Coach Prime. They both are, Christian men who wear that on their sleeve. There's no doubting where they come from there. And they're both unapologetic in their approach, realizing that it's controversial and that a lot of people aren't going to like it. They're unmoved by it.
That goes back to what I've said about professional wrestling.
That's right. That's right.
The bad guys sell the tickets.
That's right. That's right. That's a very good
bad
way.
Guys.
That's a very good way. But the guy, what we're witnessing up at CU is never been done, not just in college sports history, but I think in sports history, period.
I agree with you. Guys like that show up.
Pete, we were 1-11 team. We were dead to rights we weren't relevant in any conversation.
Well, because I know you're running for Regent, and this is really, we'll talk about it, but did they have any input from you to when they went to get him and offer him?
No. Listen, and here's the thing. You know how this works, right? When it's all said and done, there's this revisionist history. Everyone had a hand in it, and this was my role, and this was
success has 1,000 fathers.
That's right.
Failure's a bastard.
That's exactly right. That's right.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. This was as piecemeal and happenstance as it could possibly be, right? And no one was sure about this guy.
No.
Right? There were a number of universities that turned him down, didn't want to interview him.
Afraid of him.
Texas Christian University, Arizona State, I think his own alma mater, Florida State, were uneasy about this guy. It's funny how our...
Is that pushing all the chips in?
That's right. That's right. And I got to give Rick George and the powers that be, Phil DiStefano, a great deal of credit for saying, my goodness, think about it. Boulder, right? Boulder. Yeah. I mean, you bring this guy in prime time, right? With all the glitz and glitter and quotes and sayings and wearing his religion on his sleeve. That they didn't like that stuff about Bill McCartney. And you got it now in this day and age with social media and who this guy is. You talk about pushing the chips in and saying, okay, we're all in. That's what they did, and it's paying dividends.
I'll tell you who he is. He's Ric Flair. He really is.
What was Ric Flair saying?
I said that.
That's right.
I'm the best there is.
That's right.
But
my brother loved Ric Flair, by the way.
I worked with Ric Flair. I loved Ric Flair.
We have to have a wrestling show at some point because I was a guy who grew up watching, Pam Pearl Firpo and
Garfield.
That's right. That's right. Bobo Brazil.
Oh, the coconut butt.
Listen, man. Listen.
I worked with all those guys.
Pete, you can't lose me, man. I'm here for a reason.
But he's Ric Flair. I said the minute, and I never pay much attention to sports. And now my grandson was like a total geek, and you ask him, what do you want to do? He said, I want to play high school ball for Dave Logan, and then I want to go to CU and play football. And he's like a little, he's a sixth grade kid.
Love it.
He lit him up.
Listen, what makes him attractive is everything that we've talked about, right? Particularly in this day and age.
And how many people want to see him get beat?
That's exactly right. He think of a guy like Floyd Mayweather, right? People would tune in to
Pretty
see
boy Floyd.
Muhammad Ali. People would tune in to see him get beat.
You know where Ali learned it? There's been so many books written about it. Ali, he's then still Cassius Clay, and he had won the Olympics. And there was a consortium of business guys in Louisville who bought him. He has a third pro fight, and he's in Vegas. And ahead of him on the interview thing is the original, come on, Peter, make your mic thing. Gorgeous George. And George does this interview, and he goes off, and Muhammad, or then Cassius, very quiet kid. And then the next day, according to many reporters, he looks at the gate, and he sees his gate, and he sees George's gate. And he watched wrestling as a kid growing up, and he knew, and that's when he became the Lip.
That's right.
And then eventually, and I met him once, and he was a big guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a little guy. And I always wondered, were you working, or were you shooting? Because we call this the shoot. A shoot's a real one. Every once in a while, things get a little goofy in the ring, and guys go at it. But most of the time, they're working. And I never knew. When you watch Muhammad, you didn't know
if he was working or shooting.
Shooting.
Yeah.
You never knew.
Yeah.
Floyd too. I mean, Pretty Boy, same thing.
That's right. That's right. And here's the thing with.
And I never know it about Dion.
Well, that's a great point, because here's the thing about Dion, and I think we oftentimes miss, because the show is so attractive. We get attracted to the show, right? And we're watching the show. The show is attractive, but his substance and sincerity is why he's successful, and it's sustainable. When a kid or a kid's family walks into his office, or he visits their home, he's believable, not just because he knows how to connect, but because there's substance there. When I talk to Coach Prime, it's some of the best conversations that I have. I mean, the guy is curious. He wants to know. He has an opinion about things. He's listening. He's all the things that you don't see sometimes when you're blinded by the glitz and glamour of the lights.
The thing about great, and with an excuse, because I should say great women, great men, and I've been around probably too many of them, you never know.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's the secret.
That's right.
I mean, that was always a secret. You know, like, is this real?
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's what you think.
That's exactly right. Right. Is it the question? The answer to the question, is it real, is whatever you think.
And that's why those guys are like Rorschach tests.
Yeah.
You see in this guy, and I saw him like, wow. You know, the money that flew in, and the merch that flew out, and everybody on the talk radio was all about this guy, and Sports Illustrated. He was in, you know, mainstream press.
60 Minutes came in and did it.
Well, twice.
That's right.
Twice.
Two different occasions. Yeah. There's at some point we'll begin to believe what's right in front of us, right? And CU, you know, we have to pinch ourselves to say, like, wow, how did this happen for us? Again, 1-11 last year. We were at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to college sports programs. In less than 1 year, it's not been a year since he's been here. It was December, I think it was December 3rd or something, 4th last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're the most viewed, the most searched, the most.
That late game that went when CU won, and the Nielsen said like there was like 11,600,000 people up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Unbelievable.
Watching.
Unprecedented.
And were they watching the game? Yeah, sure, but they were
watching the show.
Now, this is the most important part of why CJ's here, and he'll be with us a lot, radio side and this side. You're running for Regent.
I am.
I thought that was the best thing. Okay, why?
Pete, you know, and I'm glad we started the show off the way we did, right? And look, CU has been incredibly good for me and to me. As you know my story at CU. I was able to bring my baby brother out here.
Yeah.
And it didn't just change my life, it changed the trajectory of his life.
Yep.
Right? That's two lives in my immediate family that's changed in a land that was strange to both of us when we got here.
Yes.
I got an incredible education. I had incredible access to people. I had amazing opportunities, right? So for CJ, it was a phenomenal experience. The flip side of that reality is that I'm the exception.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm the exception. And I'm saying to myself, how could I live with that fact that I'm the exception? Why can't this, or why shouldn't this be more accessible to more people? As you know, Pete, I am and we talked about it, I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Ball Corporation, one of the largest employers in the state of Colorado, Fortune 500 company. So I work in this space regularly when you talk about creating opportunities for folks, underrepresented people. And I think about how CU as a university performs incredible academic environment, incredible social environment, but who has access to it? Who benefits from it? Is it the kid on the northeast side of Denver who's only 30 miles from its flagship campus and almost have no relationship or proximity to it? Is it the son or daughter of a family farmer in Eden, Colorado, and Holyoke, Colorado, who has no access to it? And then you step back and ask yourself the question, how could that be? Why is that the case? The CU system, I think, has to do a much better job in being relevant to not just those who can afford to be on a campus with the rising cost of tuition, which is a whole nother subject, but it has to be relevant to everyone, at least accessible to everyone,
Agreed.
So that CJ's story isn't the exception.
Do you sense, and I sense this, that the plates of the earth have shifted? That I don't know what's next. I can't see around corners. I'm not, but something happened. It's the great line of something happened. The guy who wrote Joseph Heller, the guy who wrote. Come on, Peter. It'll come to me. But his second book was called Something Happened, and something happened between the second that you arrived and this insanity that we're watching in America today over this one guy at that same school that you were kind of snake bit.
Something happened.
Something happened.
And it's here's the.
It's not going back.
No. It's not going back. Here's the interesting thing, Uncle Pete, about that is, like, it's kind of consistent with what we're just talking about. That it's all in what we believe as people. Like, what happened?
What happened?
The natural follow-up question is, something happened, and tell me what, right? And I can't put my arms around it. I have theory as to what happened. What happened is less important to me than what are we going to do about it now? What are we going to do? And I think we are at a tipping point in terms of opportunities at a great institution and a great system like CU, and in terms of our world more broadly, particularly our country. I worry about our country, right? And Pete, this is why sitting across from you right now is so important to me, because here's what I believe. I have teammates, friends, loved ones who occupy space on a different side of the political spectrum. They have different beliefs. They were raised different. And I have to reconcile that there has to be space for that without judgment necessarily. I've called a friend recently to apologize because I had beliefs in my head because of his political position and stance about who he was as a person, despite the fact that I know him. And I created judgments about him. And I had to stop back. I said, CJ, are you being part of the solution in doing so, or are you part of the problem? Are you going to be a person who brings folks together and allows space for us to disagree without being disagreeable? Or are you going to retreat into a camp that further splits this country apart, I think, to the demise of all of us if we continue down that road?
Howard's first book was Catch-22. It just came into my head. And then he wrote Something Happened. Something happened. And it's not going to go back. And I don't know, like I said, my grandson, I watch him. He's way different than me.
Yeah.
He doesn't know, and he'll never know, thankfully. But in recovery, and I'll give you this one and you will wrap it. In recovery, there's a step, and it's called regrets. And there's a step that follows it, and it's called amends. And I know people that went up, knocked on the guy's door in the afternoon, the guy answers the door, here's $5,000. The guy said, what's this? He said, I stole that from you. Or people that go around, and I know people that went and laid on graves and asked to be forgiven. And that part of getting well and getting sober. And in some way, abstractly or in a real world, this kid that came from Detroit, if you'd have stayed, we opened the show with, if you'd have stayed in Detroit, you wouldn't be doing this. And yet here you are on this end, you know, a man in full, as we said growing up, and you want to do this. It's a mystery. I mean, I got no answers. I really don't have any answers, but I can see the stuff that goes on. And like you, it scares me.
Yeah.
It really scares me.
Yeah. But here's the deal. Here's the deal, in my opinion. I have to continue with this belief moving forward. We're not powerless bystanders in this play.
Oh,
right. I'm like you. I worry. My two kids, right? 26 and 24. I have two stepdaughters, right? 21 and 23. And I worry about their futures. That's what parents, that's what old folk do, right? We worry about, you mentioned your grandson and my kids. We worry, and yet I think if our worry paralyzes us, stops us from leaning in and breaking down barriers, then shame on us.
Fear is a great motivator.
You know what? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, Uncle Pete. The only reason I was worth anything in football was based on that principle. I'm a little bitty dude, right? As football, in football circles, fear is a hell of a motivator. I was a lot faster when Alfred Williams or Canavis McGee was chasing me than I was, just hanging out with the fellas on the block. Fear is a hell of a motivator.
If you don't give yourself a choice, and I call it burning the boats on the beach, you're not going back. So, somebody's got to take your head off, or,
That's right.
As I wrote a column about turning 80, and I said, got hired, got fired, been married and divorced a couple of times, and I'll go through, but we're still here.
We're still here, man.
We're still standing.
And let me tell you something, 80?
80.
One, you look incredible, bro. You look incredible. Two, I still think you're kind of telling a lie. Maybe you can sell me 68. I'm not buying 80 completely. But
October 17th, 1943, St. Margaret's Hospital, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
This guy, Pete, you look great, man.
Well, we're going to do this so many times. I'm going to book you on a radio side, and we'll take calls, because that would really.
I really would look forward. And by the way, do you mind if I share my website for folks? No. It's cj4cu.com. That's CJ the number 4, which was my jersey number, Pete. CJ the number 4cu.com. So you can go check out information on my website on what my campaign is all about. At the end of the day, if there was one word to describe it, it's we have to unite. We have to come together.
This lasted I don't know how many minutes, because I'm not tracking it, and CJ's got another appointment. I said, move the appointment, because there's certain people in my life, and you are there. We could sit here for 2 more hours.
Yes, we could. Yes, we could.
Saturday morning, 9 a.m. on 710 KNUS. We'll be talking a lot about Middle East.
Speaking of the world, right?
Speaking of the world.
Yeah.
Remember, he's running for regent. Take care of yourselves. Mark Crowley, thank you. Thanks, everybody. See you Saturday morning at 9 down the hall on 710 KNUS.